Thanks for joining me on episode 479 of the Inspired Stewardship Podcast.
Hello, my friend. This is Dr. Brad Miller from the Pathway to Promise podcast. If you'd like to stay inspired, to stay on your pathway to promise, you can't do better than listening to the Inspired Stewardship podcast with my friend, Scott Mater.
And that connection was vital to their growth. It was vital to my growth. It gave me insights into things that were going on in the company before they became a problem. And we could actually talk about it and take action and fix things and tweak things and improve relationships. I grew as an individual big time.
Welcome and thank you for joining us on the Inspired Stewardship Podcast. If you truly desire to become the person who God wants you to be, then you must learn to use your time, your talent, and your treasures for your true calling. In the Inspired Stewardship Podcast, you will learn to invest in yourself, invest in others, and develop your influence so that you can impact the world.
In today's episode about investing in yourself through stewarding your talent, I talk with you about why showing you care is so vital to making a real connection, why connection is vital for growth, and why there isn't weakness in connecting or actually showing that you care.
You've heard me talk about developing your talent, and one of the best ways to do that is through books. But if you're like most people today, it's hard to find the time to read. And that's why today's podcast is brought to you by Audible. Go to inspiredstewardship.com/audible to sign up, and you can get a 30-day free trial. There's over 180,000 titles to choose from, and you can pick one and listen your way to developing your talents via Audible. That's inspiredstewardship.com/audible to get your free trial and listen to great books the same way you're listening to this podcast.
Well, if you don't care about me, then I'm not going to care about you. You know, if you've ever seen little kids interact with each other, you've probably heard one of them say to the other some variation of that kind of comment. The idea that someone else has to like me before I can like them. You know, in high school, sometimes that happens between guys and gals. It's not an uncommon sort of sentiment to deal with the idea that, you know, if somebody else doesn't like me, then it's really hard for me to like them. It's not unusual. And here's the funny thing. It's not all that unusual to see that in adults either. The truth is that when you want to connect with other people, when you want to build a relationship with other people, when you want to work with other people in a close way, or have a relationship with other people like husband and wife, or dating, or even just good friends, part of that is learning to show that you care. Again, we've talked before about the fact that there are people that are task-oriented and there are people that are people-oriented. And especially for the task-oriented people, it can be very difficult to figure out and show that they care, because it just doesn't come naturally. By the way, that's not because these people don't have emotions. That's not because these people don't love people. That's not because people that are wired to be task-oriented don't care. It's that they have a difficulty showing that. It's somewhat foreign to how they see the world. And so there's almost a language barrier. It's like they speak task-oriented stuff to say that they care. That's how they show they care. And people-oriented people hear this and are like, but that's not showing you care. That's so focused on the mechanical stuff. Let's talk about the people. And so you got to learn to connect past that language barrier, because showing you care is vital to building a connection. You know, I've told this story before on the podcast, I think, but I'll tell it again. when I was a leader of a large team, I kind of figured out how different people were wired. And I figured out that there were some people that would just sort of sit in their cubicle quietly. They were never going to shake the cages. They were never going to get out and push for what they needed. They were never going to show up in my office to complain unless things got really, 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 really bad. They were hard workers. They were good employees, but it was easy to overlook them and ignore them. The truth was, these people were some of the nicest, most caring, most dedicated people in the office. And yet it was really easy to ignore them because they just showed up, they got things done, and they went home. And I figured out that these people needed a connection with me as the leader. And I wasn't doing my job because I wasn't getting out there and initiating it, because I am a task-oriented person. I wasn't thinking about this from the point of view of what they needed. And so as I figured this out, as it dawned on me, as I wised up and got smarter, I actually literally put an event on my calendar that had a list of names, and it repeated every month. And on Wednesday afternoon, I would get up from my desk because this event would prompt me, this pop up on my calendar, and it would tell me to go visit with certain people. And I would stop by their cubicle, and I made sure that I paid attention. I learned what their kids' names were. I learned what their spouse's name was. I learned, what they were doing, what they were interested in. If last month we talked about a kid's baseball game that was coming up, I asked them how the kid did on the baseball game. And at first glance, this kind of sounds cold and mechanical, like I forced building a relationship into a task box. But that's actually exactly what I did. And it's valuable because it wasn't inauthentic. It actually was authentic. By the way, these folks knew that there was an event on my calendar, and that actually felt good to them because it showed that I was going out of my way to actually seek them out and find out what was going on and make a connection and talk to them about what they needed. And that connection was vital to their growth. It was vital to my growth. It gave me insights into things that were going on in the company before they became a problem. And we could actually talk about it and take action and fix things and tweak things and improve relationships. I grew as an individual big time. So did my employees. So did my team. And that connection was key to building that. At first glance, a lot of times leaders, when I talk to leaders about this sort of behavior, they think of it sometimes as a form of weakness. The people should come to me if they have a problem, and that's my job as a leader is to fix it. And if they're not telling me about it, well, how can I be expected to do anything? And sure, that's fair. There's some truth to that. But it's really not weakness to connect with other people and show them that you care. It's tremendous strength, and it takes bravery because sometimes it's not reciprocated. Sometimes they look back at you and they're not real happy with you right now. They're angry. They're mad at a situation. They're upset about something that's going on in their life or in work. And that can feel like they're attacking. It can feel like there's going to be an attack, and that fear kind of holds us back sometimes from making those connections. But the truth is, it takes great strength. It takes great bravery to be the person that reaches out and begins to make that connection and show others that you care so that everyone can grow together to be living out their own calling. Thanks for listening.
Thanks so much for listening to the Inspired Stewardship Podcast. As a subscriber and listener, we challenge you to not just sit back and passively listen, but act on what you've heard and find a way to live your calling. If you like this episode on the stewardship of talent, you can go over to inspiredstewardship.com/talent and sign up for our 5-week series on the stewardship of talent. Or if you're in the U.S., you can text 44222 talent tips. That's talent tips to 44222 and get those tips. Until next time, invest your time, your talent, and your treasures. Develop your influence and impact the world.